devastating for a grieving family of a 19-year-old man who was shot and killed early this morning. Thursday, you may have remembered, we had a press release letting the public know that we were going to have 50 additional police officers at the 4th of July festivities to ensure that people watching the fireworks could bring their families, enjoy the fireworks with their families in a safe manner. Unfortunately, as the night went on, a group of hundreds of unaccompanied young people started to engage in disruptive behavior, small fights, and that escalated. They were throwing mortar fireworks. Officers began to take enforcement action. We made numerous arrests, including a young man who was actually throwing fireworks while armed with a handgun. I was encouraged as it became later and later in the night, as I had conversations with parents that would come up to me, say they were looking for their kids. They had seen on social media that these young people were being disruptive, so it really made me optimistic about this community. Kids as young as middle school, I saw out there by themselves, engaging in some frightening behavior. So at about 1:20, we heard gunshots in the area of Intendencia between Jefferson and Palafox. Officers very close by, including myself and others, ran to the location. We saw numerous people on the ground suffering from gunshot wounds. Officers immediately began providing first aid. Tourniquets were applied. Tragically, a young man was provided CPR. The CPR was ineffective. He was pronounced on scene. 6 other victims, so a total of 7 gunshot victims for this incident. The other 6, fortunately, are all receiving medical care at various hospitals, and all 6 are expected to survive. Our team's been working nonstop since these shots. Like I said, we had about 50 additional officers, and that included some of our best detectives were out there last night. They switched right from their uniform, traffic duties to what they do best, which is investigating this extremely serious crime. I met the grieving mother of this 19-year-old young man yesterday, and she deserves justice and she deserves answers, and we're going to do everything we can to get those for her. And with that, I'll say, you guys have any questions? I'm happy to answer what I can, just knowing that this investigation is obviously very early in these stages.
Sheriff, Chief, and when did y'all first notice the gathering of large numbers of young people?
The Plaza Ferdinand started to fill up about the same time that the fireworks set off, so about 9:15, 9:30 or so, I want to say. And then when by the time the fireworks concluded, that increased more and more. That's not a new phenomenon. It was something that I had discussed with my team as to how previous 4th of Julys have gone, and that was something that had been observed, and that's why we increased, I think by as many as threefold, the boots on the ground of the officers, so that we could still plan for that. And like I alluded to, there were a lot of very young kids earlier in the night. Yes, we had young people throwing fireworks. A lot of those kids were talked to, addressed. These mostly were kids just doing kids thing, but without any adults engaged. As the time passed and it became later, we did see a little bit of an older crowd. It seemed to me, from how I viewed it, there was a lot of activity at the bars on Palafox Street, and these of course are age groups, 19-year-old like our victim, a group of people who weren't quite old enough to get in the bars, but who wanted to stay there and wanted to be present. One of the things I wanted to point out, that there were young people as young as middle school students, was because Although the youngest victim in this case was 16, the age range was 16 to 26 of the 7 victims. There were very young, innocent kids out there, and as tragically as this was, the loss of a young man's life, with 7 people shot and with bullets flying, it could have been even that much worse.
Do we know how many shots were fired?
By now, we very well may have. I was out there till about 5:30, and then I came in here to start preparing for this, among other things. Our forensics team was still out there. They were out there with a medical examiner. It was a very large, geographically large crime scene. It was the entire length of Intendencia between Jefferson and Palafox, and a little bit more as some of the victims ran, further than that. There's a lot of foliage there that I know they were combing through, so I saw quite a few shell casings. So can't tell you for sure what the number is, but certainly hearing the shots myself, it sounded like a volley of fire. If you said it was 10 to 20, I wouldn't be surprised if it was more.
Do you believe this, I know it's early, but do you believe it to be random, or do you think it was targeted?
We believe that it was targeted. I don't think that that this was a random act at all. From the very preliminary investigation that we had, I want to say too, we have had a lot of cooperation from individuals that were there, a lot of cooperation from the businesses that were there. We still just got off the phone with one other organization over there on Palafox Street that's going to help us this morning, reviewing some video surveillance. Everyone in the community is really stepping up and showing that we don't want, Pensacola doesn't want to be the city that's ever going to be numb to a single person shot, much less 7 of our community members struck by gunfire.
There's multiple events that happen at that area of downtown. What do you want to say to the community members that might be concerned about safety?
Well, I think the most important, a couple things. Number one is like we just talked about, this was a targeted event. This wasn't a random act of violence, but the most important thing to say at this stage in the investigation is that we are working nonstop. There is one, and it's too early in the investigation. It's possible there was more than one shooter, but at least one shooter, obviously. And our detectives, our forensics team, everyone is doing so far an excellent job, an extremely professional job, and it is absolutely my intention to make sure that these individuals are taken off the street as soon as possible. And this is a very safe city, and there's very few people, I think, in our community that are willing to pull a trigger and take the life of someone else. And getting that individual or those individuals off the street as soon as possible I think will make the city much safer. So, but what would I say? I would say that I would feel comfortable taking my family down to Palafox Street tonight.
You mentioned there were multiple arrests. Were these prior to the shooting? Can you talk about, I guess, kind of maybe how many and for what sorts of offenses?
Yeah, I want to say there were at least 5. Most of it, a lot of the young people who were engaging in disorderly behavior were essentially counseled, mentored by the police officers, explaining how dangerous fireworks were, et cetera. It did turn to a point where some of the young people were throwing mortar fireworks, which are very dangerous, and not lighting off fireworks to enjoy the fireworks, but throwing these fireworks at individuals, which is obviously can cause serious injuries. One arrest that I was involved in was one such person, and that individual ended up also having a firearm in his waistband. And what you're doing, bringing a firearm to as a teenager down to 4th of July and throwing fireworks at people doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So I'm glad that he was put in custody, because that could have been another tragic story. So most of the illegal activity was minor, but when you put all that together with as many as, say, 500 kids, many of who were engaging in this illegal activity, it creates an extremely dangerous environment. Like I said, we had about 50 extra police officers down there, and even with that police presence, someone was still emboldened enough to commit this heinous act of violence this morning.
And at the time of the shooting, I know it was around 1:30, what was the area like at that time? Were there still a lot of people walking around? Were there many witnesses to the shooting?
There were, by 1:30, I would say a large amount of the younger, the very young kids. You know, I saw kids that looked to me as young as 10 years old or so, maybe with a slightly older sibling. Many of those very young kids had moved on, but there were still hundreds of young people, hundreds of teenagers that were outside the bars that obviously couldn't get in the bars because they're too young. So still hundreds of kids on the street, which very well likely played into the fact that 7 individuals were struck. I don't know that any of those 7, as a fact right now, were the intended target. But I know when there's that many people in an urban environment and someone fires a gun, it's extremely dangerous.
Yep. Custody yet for the actual shooting portion of this.
At this point in time, no one is in custody. Right.
Have suspects been identified?
We have not identified a suspect. What we have is a team of detectives that were out at the area hospitals talking to every single one of the victims that was able to be talked to. I think 1 or maybe 2 were headed into emergency surgery. So from the point I left and the scene, a lot of progress was being made, getting as much information as we can, and maybe even more importantly than that, talking to the individuals in the community, in the area that stayed behind, that were cooperating with the police department, and just say that they did not want to tolerate this sort of violence in our city. So the help from the community may very well be the thing that gets the answers for this grieving mother.
Any message to parents, like you mentioned, they were young kids, a lot of them weren't even able to get in the bars, but they were still kind of left unsupervised. Any message to parents?
Well, as I said, I was really encouraged because while we were down, and I was down there for hours, I was down there for the entire time up till about 5:30 in the morning. And as it got more disruptive, there were parents that probably recognized me from seeing me in the news that would walk up to me and say, "Chief, I'm here. I'm trying to get my son. I think he's here somewhere. I don't think this is right." And I heard that from several people, and it really made me very optimistic about the direction that Pensacola is taking, because these teen takeovers, we've seen it at the Cordova Mall, we've seen it at elsewhere in the county. They may seem harmless when described on their face, but when you see the possible consequences that they have when that many young people are involved, there very well be 7 completely innocent, victims, really young people. 26 is far too young to me to be contemplated in a deadly situation like this. So. Be involved in your kids' lives, like the parents that were there tonight, to get their parents and take them away from a situation, and that's it. I can tell you, I've been a police officer for a very long time, and the percentage of arrestees that I've had who had a loving mother, father, or mother figure or father figure in their life that were looking out for them, an adult mentor in their life looking out for them, was very low. Every successful adult that I know can point to an adult when they were a kid that looked out for them. And if every child in the city of Pensacola had that, I think there would be much less need for us to have conversations like this.
For the minors arrested,